Two people, same kind of suffering. One loses their job, their savings, their health, all in the same year. Another person loses the exact same things, job, savings, health, same year. For one of them, it's God building something in them they couldn't have developed any other way. For the other, it's the enemy trying to destroy something before it can be built. The circumstances are identical, but the source is completely different. And here's why that matters more than most people realize. How you respond to a trial from God is the opposite of how you should respond to an attack from the enemy. If God is taking you through a trial and you spend your energy fighting it, rebuking it, running from it, begging for it to stop you, miss what He's building. If the enemy is attacking you and you spend your energy surrendering to it, accepting it as God's will, you walk right into the trap. Same suffering, wrong response, completely different outcome. So the question isn't just, why is this happening to me? The question is, where is this coming from? And the Bible, if you read it carefully, gives you a way to tell the difference. Let's start with something that almost nobody talks about, because it changes everything. In the book of Job, chapter 1, God is speaking to Satan, and God says, "Have you considered my servant Job?" God brought Job up. God pointed Satan toward him. The suffering that followed the loss of his children, his wealth, his health, was initiated in a conversation between God and Satan, with God speaking first. Now jump to Luke 22. The night before the crucifixion, Jesus looks at Peter and says, "Simon, Simon, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat." Demanded permission. Satan had to ask. He couldn't just attack. He needed authorization. And then Paul, writing to the Corinthians about his thorn in the flesh, a messenger from Satan sent to torment him. Paul prayed 3 times for God to remove it. God's answer was, "My grace is sufficient for you." God didn't remove it. Here's the theological reality most people skip over. Some suffering comes from God's direct hand. Some comes from the enemy, but only with God's permission. And some is simply the result of living in a broken world. None of it, not a single moment of it, is outside God's awareness or beyond His ability to use. But that doesn't mean it's all the same. It isn't. And knowing the difference tells you how to respond. Here is the first and most reliable diagnostic marker. A trial from God pushes you toward Him. An attack from the enemy pushes you away. This sounds simple, but it's the most clarifying question you can ask about any season of suffering. Not how bad does it feel, not how long has it lasted, but this. In the middle of this, is there something drawing me closer to God or further away? Job lost everything in a single day. His children, his livestock, his wealth. He tore his robe, shaved his head, fell to the ground and worshipped. "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." That was his first response. Not because he wasn't in pain, but because the suffering, as terrible as it was, produced in him an instinct toward God rather than away from Him. Now contrast that with the pattern of a satanic attack. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah had just called down fire from heaven, slaughtered 450 false prophets, and ended a 3-year drought through prayer, the most powerful prophetic moment in his entire ministry. And then Jezebel sent him a message. "By this time tomorrow, I'll do to you what you did to them." 1 woman, 1 threat, and Elijah, the same man who just stood alone against 450, ran into the wilderness, sat under a tree and said, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life." That withdrawal from God, that I've had enough, I want to be done, is one of the most recognizable signatures of a satanic attack. The enemy doesn't just want to hurt you. He wants to convince you that God isn't worth returning to, that the fight isn't worth having, that walking away is the only rational option. So ask yourself honestly, what direction are you moving? Job moved toward God in his suffering. Elijah, under attack, moved away. Same question. Different answer. That answer tells you something. The second marker is about precision. Specifically, what is the suffering targeting? A trial from God targets your character. An attack from the enemy targets your calling. God's trials are designed to produce something. They have a construction purpose. James 1 puts it plainly. The testing of your faith produces perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. That's not pain for pain's sake. That's a renovation. God is building something in you that can only be built through pressure. An attack from the enemy, on the other hand, is aimed at destruction. And specifically, it's aimed at the area of your calling, the exact place where you carry the most potential impact. Go back to Job. He was blameless and upright, but what was actually being tested? God said to Satan, "Does Job fear God for nothing?" The attack was aimed at the integrity of Job's relationship with God. Not his possessions, those were just the mechanism. The real target was his faith, his calling as a man of God in his generation. Look at the Apostle Paul. His thorn in the flesh came right after the text is specific about this being caught up to the third heaven and receiving revelation so extraordinary he couldn't even describe it. The attack followed the revelation precisely because the revelation carried such weight. Paul was being used to write most of the New Testament. The enemy couldn't afford for him to function in pride and self-sufficiency. Whether the thorn was God allowing a satanic attack to keep Paul humble, or something more direct, it landed exactly at the intersection of his gift and his weakness. So look at what's being hit. Is the suffering pressing on your pride, your comfort, your self-sufficiency? That has the shape of a trial, something God is refining. Is it aimed at your ministry, your voice, your ability to fulfill your specific calling? That has the shape of an attack, something designed to neutralize you before you can do damage to the enemy's territory. Joseph's brothers didn't hate him randomly. They hated him because of the dreams, the very thing that represented his future authority. The attack landed precisely on his destiny. That's the fingerprint of the enemy. This is the marker that most people don't know to look for, but it's written clearly in the book of Job, and once you see it, you won't forget it. A trial from God has a boundary. An attack from the enemy, left unopposed, has no natural stopping point. In Job chapter 1, God says to Satan, "Everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a hand." There was a line Satan could not cross. He could take Job's possessions, his children, his livelihood, but he could not touch Job's body. Not yet. Not without a second conversation and a second permission. And later, when God gave that second permission, he is in your hands. But spare his life, Satan could go no further than that line allowed. Satan operates within limits set by God. He is not God's equal, roaming freely and attacking at will. He is a created being who requires authorization to touch what belongs to God. That's the theological reality. But what does it look like practically? A trial from God tends to have a shape it builds towards something. There's a pressure that increases, then an inflection point, then a resolution. Abraham waited 25 years for Isaac, not forever. There was a moment when the trial ended and the promise arrived. Joseph spent years in prison. Then one morning, Pharaoh had a dream, and everything changed. The waiting had a limit. An attack from the enemy, if you never engage it, if you never resist it, will push as far as it's allowed to go. It doesn't naturally resolve into something good. Left alone, it escalates. James says, "Resist the devil, and he will flee." That word flee implies he doesn't leave on his own. He has to be pushed. He won't self-limit. The fact that you have to resist actively, deliberately, is itself a sign that you're dealing with something that requires that kind of response. So ask, is this building towards something that has the shape of an end? Or is it escalating, intensifying, never quite resolving? The first suggests a trial with a limit. The second suggests an attack with an agenda. A trial from God may shake you, but it never changes what God says about who you are. An attack from the enemy always begins with your identity. Go back to Satan's opening accusation against Job. Does Job fear God for nothing? You have blessed him. Take it all away, and he will curse you to your face. What is he actually saying? He's saying Job's faith is transactional. He's saying Job doesn't really love God, he just loves the benefits. He's attacking Job's identity as a man of genuine faith. That's always where the enemy starts. Not with your circumstances, with your interpretation of yourself. Jesus himself experienced this. In Matthew chapter 4, in the wilderness. Every single temptation Satan brought began the same way. If you are the Son of God, the attack on Jesus wasn't primarily about bread or kingdoms. It was about destabilizing his sense of who he was before anything else happened in his ministry. Because if the enemy could get Jesus to prove his identity, he could redirect the entire trajectory of what he came to do. When what you're experiencing causes you to question your identity, am I really called? Does God really love me? Am I even a real Christian? Pay attention. That specific flavor of confusion is almost always the enemy's signature. God may let a trial strip away comfort, security, relationships, even health. But he doesn't take your identity. He's the one who gave it. When Jesus came up out of the water at his baptism, the voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." Then, immediately, the Spirit led him into the wilderness. The trial followed the identity declaration, but the identity declaration came first. God doesn't send you into hard seasons without first establishing who you are to him. If you're in a season where you can't find your footing about who God says you are, where your sense of being loved, chosen, called, feels unstable, that attack on your identity is the real target. The circumstances around it may or may not be from the enemy. But that specific effect almost certainly is. This final marker requires time to see, but it may be the most decisive of all. A trial from God always produces something. An attack from the enemy, if it succeeds, produces only loss. Romans 5. We rejoice in our sufferings, because suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. Character, hope. That's a production chain. Suffering goes in. Hope comes out. Something is made that wasn't there before.